Hey, what's up, everyone? We are here and ready to talk. I am Chris from the Great American Road Trip. Down below is Francesca, the Extreme Haunt Hunter. And to my left or right, depending on how you're looking, is Josh from Blackheart Collective. And we can see Francesca.
It's a miracle. Allie did it, though.
It's a Christmas miracle. What would we do without Allie? All right. So thank you all for joining us. This is going to be exciting because we were all talking, and Josh is like, I want to start talking a little bit about what goes on.
What we do is secret, but like to an extent. And I think this is a time for transparency. It really is.
Okay. So, I guess my first question to you is like, what started Blackheart?
Blackheart started from a desire I fell in love with just the base idea of immersive horror. And I said, okay, well, what can we do with this? And it really came from a time where we didn't know a lot about what immersive horror even could be. And so it was something that grew over time from, what can we do? What can't we do? And then I kind of threw what can't we do out the window. And it starts, the Blackheart Collective is a collective of independent artists, actors, and writers who come together and tell stories in a very collaborative way, as much as possible. And this has been a huge year for us. It's been a huge year for us so far.
Yeah, it's been a huge year. I mean, it's been your first year.
Yeah.
And you've gone from nobody knowing about you to I don't know anybody that's in this extreme immersive community not knowing about you.
It's been weird. We started with a whisper campaign, and it was kind of always my the idea was let's find the people, let's find the audience, let's see what they like or if they like what we're doing, and we got really, really lucky. Overall, some people, like I always say, our show isn't for everybody. And that's proven very, very true. It's very true. But luckily we found some people who really, really enjoy what we do so far.
So let's talk about that. And Francesca, feel free to jump in whenever you want. Josh, you say that your show isn't for everybody. When you were creating it, did you have a point where you were like, I don't know, I think I'm pushing this envelope too far. Is anybody even going to respond?
Yeah, we talk in a lot of poetics, and we know that's a deal breaker for a lot of people. The language we use, it can be a turnoff to some people. And so that was like my first big concern is like, my background as a writer is as doing spoken word as a poet first. And it's what I really love to do. And I really wanted to bring that into immersive horror. And so a lot of our storytelling is done through poems. And that was a big concern initially. And then we started trying to push the envelope in terms of the things that people would be willing to do as we moved. And from the first show, which is The Demise of Francis Darcy, through Ritual, it's a very different experience in terms of, because we've learned along the way the things that people will and won't do and how to push even further ahead.
My first question, I guess, is like who, for people who don't know, who is really like, all of the people who were involved in the Blackheart Collective? Because I think a lot of people don't realize how really detailed it is and how many people are involved.
A lot of people are involved now. We started off very, very small. It was myself and one other person. And now our team currently consists of Melody Phillips, Rachel Zilberg, my beautiful wife, Sam. Let's see. I've got a list because I didn't want to miss anybody. Eli Major, who filmed our finale for the last show and is an incredible eye. Cassidy Kelly, Marissa Pona, who I'm sure is here, and Natalie DePaulis, who makes up kind of our writing and acting staff at this point. It's, each show we've picked up more and more people who are really interested in what we were doing and the style of what we were doing, and we've just really tried to pull them along with us to keep creating a lot of art that might not get seen otherwise.
Can you tell us about some of the characters that you play?
I personally play, and here we go, spoiler alert, probably the voice that people are most familiar with ever hearing me voice from trailers and stuff. I play Price Radley Smith, who is now dead. They are basically the boogeyman, and they're the evil laugh that you guys hear so often. And then I play another character named Francis Darcy, who is basically the other side of it, and probably is closer to who I am as a person, opposed to Price, who is literally the worst person you've ever met.
Can you give us any background about those characters at all?
Absolutely. I guess I'll go to the kind of the idea of what the circle is. We are a vaguely supernatural show. Anyone who's taken part probably has a fair idea that we deal with a lot of magic, impractical uses, along with telling the stories of our characters to make them three-dimensional. And so Price was, he was basically the boogeyman. They spoke in cursed words, and that's kind of our whole gig, is that words wound worst. It's one of the first lessons people learn when they come into the circle, and the intent of words and the magic kind of that comes behind that. I don't have a problem admitting that, in terms of belief structures, like, I'm all over the place. I'm a self-identified chaos magician, which just means that, I'll take anything from anywhere and try to use it to, manipulate energy. And that was like all stuff that we wanted to be able to build into our shows. And so far, people have reacted to it really, really earnestly and nicely. I think that that's what was one of our big steps, was going, okay, we know we can build three-dimensional characters. Now, can we have you believe that you're living in the supernatural world with us? And so, Price is the boogeyman of the circle. And now, rest in peace, Price Radley Smith. He's dead now.
Okay, well, real quick to answer Andrew Daniels' question, yes, I am wearing Ice Nine Kills merch. But I'm really curious, because I was one of the people who was lucky enough to experience some of the characters in person. So I'm really curious how you, like, if there's a process, and what is that process that you guys all use to get into your character? Because, I mean, it was absolutely horrifying in the best way to see that, like, actually happen.
Thank you. We all get into character. Typically, the actors, we're pretty much always role-playing with each other in a text-based way. And the closer and closer we get to the show, I start role-playing in a very different way. But so we're always working on our characters. We're always, if anyone's familiar with the way our show works, it's done over Discord, and it's not uncommon for the actors in character to be DMing each other. We typically don't break fourth wall with each other at all within the environment, and so we will begin practicing and talking to each other there. And I know for myself, getting into character is a lot of me rocking back and forth on the balls of my feet and feeling 15 feet tall, and trying to get myself there. It's a lot of practicing that voice, though. It is a lot of, I think probably everyone I know is really irritated with me 4 days before a show when I disappear off social media and I only talk in a much lower register, and I'm doing the laugh every time, and it makes a lot of my loved ones really uncomfortable, I think. Do I have trouble getting out of characters, Chase? No, by the end of the show, I'm so stoked to just be me that it's very, very easy. I'm so happy to speak in my own speaking voice, and happy to be away from that part of performance that usually by the end I'm just like, oh boy. Melanie is one of my favorite victims as well. Absolutely. Spricey. Oh, geez. And so, it's a process of getting into that character and being able to look at that kind of like snake-eyed look at the world. We are very, all right, so Curtis, we're super unique with that, I think. Where however far our participants are willing to go, I'm willing to go with them. In the past, we have rewritten whole shows at the midpoint. In our second show specifically, which was supposed to be a remount of our first show, we rewrote the entire show based on the direction the participants were moving in. And we always want to give that gravity. We want there to be an opportunity for the participants to push things forward or to push things in other directions.
So, speaking of, I know we saw Mel talk about being killed by Price. We actually have some shots because, correct me if I'm wrong, for the finale, you kind of did have an in-person show for the last show.
Yeah, we were really, really lucky. Melody Phillips, who basically worked as executive producer for the filming of the finale, set us up at a haunted attraction that they work at, and we were really, really lucky to get the space to do it in. And something that we've moved towards, I mean, and basically in every one of our shows, we've had a video finale of some kind. And this was the largest scale thing we were ever able to do. It involved a lot of traveling to get there and do that. And we had awesome victims who took part in it. And we got to really, for the first time since I left Michigan, because I'm out in the Pacific Northwest now, get into that live show element. And it was actually very, very exciting to get to do that. Everybody was super champs about it.
So I have some footage from that, if you don't mind me showing.
Not at all. Not at all.
All right. Let me just pull this up. So we'll watch it, and then you kind of let me know what's taking place on this. I don't know if you want to set us up. We're looking at the teaser number 1, though.
Oh, boy. Yeah, you can just roll it. This is us being menacing in a very live environment. Poor Allie. You're coming home. I can see how long you are.
You say Elizabeth?
Oh, I like this one.
3, 4, 6.
That's better.
I like to pick apart hormones and a dark heart. What a ruin.
You can't tell, but everybody was having such a good time.
We really were. I mean, there were definitely moments that were very intense, but I mean, it was a blast. I did not expect to have that much fun.
It was really interesting to be able to be shooting something that, in terms of using physicality, that was shot for film, because it just gave us a lot more gravity to do certain things and certain ways to do it. But I mean, I know, Francesca, you were in that room, and it was a lot of people to be filming that. And I'm still so pleased looking at any of the footage of it. Eli Major, who did the shooting there, like, I'm just like, I never noticed him in the room. And it blows me away.
We got another question from Chase here before we go to the next thing of footage. Names and ranks. If you will seems to play an important part of the BHC.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Anyone who takes part in a live Blackheart show that is circle relative they're going to feel the experience that they had within our remote. They're going to have a much better understanding of the characters that they're going to meet and what will happen to them. And that is something that, to me, is super important, is to build on the experiences you've already had. I love the idea that so many of you have met these characters before, and may or may not get a chance to sit in a room with me. And I really hope that, yeah, I can't wait for that. I can't wait for that. Let's get a vaccine, guys, because I'm so ready.
So
ready.
We are going to go on to teaser number 2 now.
Mm-hmm.
And let's check this out.
Put this one in the fucking chair. What kind of games do you like to play? They don't talk. Just make it so much fucking worse. Provide me an insight. Tell me something sad.
You?
Oh, yeah.
No. Something in here. Not out there. In here. Someone took up his bag. All the things I've done.
Oh, tell me just fucking one.
Heard a lot of people.
But did you enjoy it? That's the real question. 'Cause what a fucking waste!
I gotta say, I love it because I don't see you. You know, I see that character and I know you well. And
Yeah.
I love watching that because I'm like, dang, he can act. Like, this is good.
Every once in a while, I drop it all and do the.
Oh, filth.
But only every once in a while and not on camera. Yeah, it was a. I would like to think for the people there, the finale was shot in 4 cuts total. So it was very much an extension of what the live show was, with 4 times where I'm like, okay, guys, I need more blood, which I'll release that footage at some point because the bloopers are hilarious. And we definitely have a sense of humor, as for as serious as I'll try to be most of the time.
And let's see, I believe. Oh, did I skipped one in between?
We've got this is probably one of my favorite sequences, and this is one that comes directly from the finale that was shown initially before color grading was done to make Blackheart Yearbook, which will be coming later on.
Oh, we're gonna have to talk about that. All right.
What do you want? I figure rubber taffy said one.
What a champ, Mel says. I just want to say.
So
I came across some of my favorite victims that night of all time.
So what was happening there? What was going on? You were whispering into their ear and just kind of putting them under? Is that what the storyline was?
So Price Smith has a supernatural power, we'll call it, called the Whisper, that allows them to disintegrate the ground beneath their feet, that allows them to haunt the area around them, and he can kill with just a word. It's one of the things that made Price so dangerous. And at the end of Ritual, we basically had a kind of a hard reset for what the Circle is and what it will be going forward after. Ritual was, I mean, realistically, the culmination of 5 separate storylines that took part before it. We have a continuing narrative, trying to get people, in and into our universe. And so each time we run a show, it's all just trying to get everyone into the universe and have them begin understanding it. I agree, Chase. Seriously, once again, huge props to Eli Major, who stepped in and was director of photography. And like I said, walking around that space, I was constantly moving, I was constantly prowling. And I don't remember seeing Eli once during that experience. He was able to capture the moments in a way that was really surprising.
So now that we saw kind of, the clips, can I mention the amazing little bit of a reference that was in there, which is my favorite picture of all time? Okay, so Josh gave me the honor of, I don't even know how it happened, but I was walking somewhere and Josh was like, hey, do you want to come and see the set? And so I was walking with them back to the set, and the second I got on the set, I looked, and on the set there was a picture of it was a picture from SpongeBob, and we had a discussion about the fact that it was going to stay in there, and it was, I think, like, looking back at that, that's just such a little hidden gem that absolutely made my day, and I think just is life-changing to the video if you catch it in there.
Bold and brash being in there was literally one of my favorite things. Like I said, we have a sense of humor about what we do, and it was one of those things that Mel's came to me and said, okay, well, what set deck do we want to take down? And there was two things we kept. Bold and brash was absolutely one of them because it was just too funny, and I was like, I need a shot of Price slow clapping in front of Bold and brash. And the other was the Yeehaw hat on the deer's head, which is probably my favorite thing in the world because there's a deer head on the wall that's literally wearing a camo hat, and it just cracked me up too much, like to not keep that stuff in there because, yeah, we're getting less afraid of being funny. I think that's part of what it is. It's like I learned a lot of lessons along the way from like all of the shows, and one of those is a huge one is don't take yourself so seriously. If I had to give my favorite quote from Ritual that I got to say as a character, it was, I'm a master destroyer, not a graphic designer. And getting to say that was like the most ridiculous thing in the world, considering the gravity of the things we were playing with at the time.
So Paul has a question. What surprised you the most when staging Ritual?
It was the very idea that that we had even come as far as we had, that we had all these storylines that we knew we wanted to wrap up that were really, we see things kind of cryptically in each of our shows. And so when we started staging Ritual, it became, what can we do? What storylines can we wrap up? And how can we, like, the progression onto whatever the next thing is? And I was just really happy that a wider audience, I guess maybe that's the most surprising, that a wider audience accepted the style and the tone and were willing to be immersed inside of what we were doing. Because I mean, up until Ritual, our audiences was between 8 and 14 people. And so to be upwards of 40 and still be able to keep that consistent, I think we were all sort of surprised by it. Now, would I say the audience was too big for Ritual? Yeah, I would. Will the next shows be smaller? I'm doing a one-on-one show next. Absolutely. Yes, Conspiring Cat. We were secret for about 8 months. And I think that we've come to a time where I want to make sure that the people who come to our shows have the expectation of what's going to happen, and it's not blindsiding. Realistically, I would love to have people in the show that this is what they want. And so absolutely.
Did you kind of want to, and if you don't want to, that's fine. Did you want to talk about what happened in each of the circles?
I mean, yeah, I can talk about the themes of each one.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't know the names of our shows. Typically, the name of the adventure and outside of Ritual is not announced until you see the credits that run at the end of our shows. Our first show, First Circle, which we lovingly call First Circle, which was literally me not knowing what the fuck I was doing, is called The Demise of Francis Darcy. And it was a meditation on sadness and loss and what it means to lose somebody. Our second show was The Ballad of the Devastator, and that was straight up about anger and what it meant to be angry and to embrace anger. Our third show was Death of a Gentleman. Death of a Gentleman was about a lot of things. It was about what it means to stand up, to break away from the norm, and for anybody who's been in our shows, it's quite a bit about aberrancy. We followed up that show with Anthology, which was literally a recap of the first 3 shows run in 1 week. And Anthology, in a lot of ways, was the testing ground for what we did in Ritual, which was Ritual was about change, accepting who you are, and it was about love. It was really, I mean, Ritual was a love story in many, many ways. And it was, Ritual, here we go. Of all of the babies, Ritual is my favorite. It's my favorite. Each step of the way, like our first show was all text-based, 100% text-based. The second one, we began incorporating live audio elements into it. The third show, we continue that on until we've kind of reached the model of where we're at now, which is quite a bit of live audio performance and visual media. And yeah, okay, so let's talk about Subsistence. So Blackheart Subsistence is a 60 to 90 minute one-on-one immersive remote experience. There are 2 tracks to it. One is meant for new participants and one is meant for previous participants. For new participants, this will be the circle distilled. It will be extremely high pressure. If you don't know what escalation is, you'll be expected to do that in front of us live. It will incorporate a lot of the things that we've done before, which is escalation. It'll be a very heavily, it's not a show you're going to sit back and watch. It's going to be a show that you are moving around your house or your apartment, and you are responding directly to us and something where you're going to be expected to talk back. It is not a passive experience. It is highly interactive, and it is was me looking at going after, especially after coming out of Ritual with a huge audience, going, how do we break this into a format that a lot of other people are doing? Because I'm so inspired by so many groups right now. Black Mass, PD Extreme, and what they're doing after looking up and going, okay, we've done these long run shows. Oh yes, live escalations. Yes. That's so like your show time is going to be from X time to X time, and you will be escalated during that and expected to perform that live. I would say, hey, start getting cracking on your writing skills, y'all. Oh, Andrew, I know you too well.
I'm muted. Francesca, do you got a question real quick before I take this one?
Real quick, I'm really curious your thoughts on your interview process, because I think for me that was like when I was first starting out, that was one of the coolest aspects. I was like so nervous for that. And I know we had spoken before, I think it was Ritual, and just hearing about your days and how many interviews that you went through, I think absolutely blew my mind.
Yeah. To get into Ritual, because we're invitation only, basically at the end of the day. Subsistence will be our first not invitation only show. I'm going to throw that out there. This will be an entry point for a lot of people. But like the interview process became really important to us when we first started. I found the audience. I literally creeped on them until they were like, okay, I'll do this. And I selected the audience that way. And as we got through more and more shows, it became, okay, well, who is this appropriate for? What are the questions we need to ask? And so I went to my team and we discussed in terms of exactly, what we needed to talk to people about, what we needed to find out, and it became kind of an integral part of the process for myself was, I want people to have a good time with what they do. And so when we began our Ritual interviews, the interview time initially was about 10 minutes. And I think by Ritual's audience selection, it was about 30 minutes per person. I just wanted to make sure I gave people enough information without telling them the trappings of what we were doing, that they were coming in and they were aware of exactly what it is we were going to do. Our show is very intense in terms of the amount of interaction, the amount of stuff you're going to be reading, the amount of information you're going to take in. And that's perhaps something I could probably let the audience know better in the future. But I just want to make sure I was able to have a really upfront conversation of, hey, when we say escalate, this is what this means. If I say your evidence is going to be made public, this is what I mean. And I never want to have a shadow of a doubt on the fact that what we do is emotionally intense. And like, I can't even remember my interview, like quotes at the top, but I always say at the end of reading our disclaimer, You know, a lot of haunts use a disclaimer like this to just pre-scare you before the show. And honestly, that's not what I'm doing. I need you to understand that we are going to emotionally manipulate you. We are going to simulate, as much as you can simulate emotion, we're going to do that. And we're going to make you very, very sad. We're going to make you very, very angry. We're probably going to make you cry. And that's one of the things that I think is different in terms of, you know, I say to my friends all the time, well, I don't even know if Blackheart is horror per se. At the end of the day, like, I think the scariest thing in the world is for people to be honest and vulnerable. And that's going to be the hardest thing for most people to get over. And I think that is terrifying. And realistically, that's what we do. We give people a platform to say the things they want, to be seen, to know that they're not alone. But getting to that level of it is terrifying.
So,
Curtis,
Curtis,
go ahead.
Top 3 monumental moments of Ritual. What gave you that this is it feeling?
The number one for me is a task called Crack the Mirror. And I'm not going to go into what that was. But for me, once we started running Crack the Mirror, I knew that this is what I was hoping for. It was what I really, really wanted. And as difficult as it was probably my favorite part of the show. Getting to do that on an individual basis was huge. And it was really awesome to feel everyone's emotions together. There were multiple moments during Ritual. As soon as everyone started talking the way that we do, it's one of the first instructions we give people is learn to speak like we do. And once we started seeing that language coming through, I was really, really happy. The circle adores you, stuff like that. And that was a huge one. Definitely, Crack the Mirror. And then I had a moment with one participant that I will remember absolutely forever, where I was on a direct communication level with them, and they just sat there screaming, "This isn't happening, stop." It was probably, that's my second favorite moment. But day one, people were speaking in our language. They had adopted to what we were, and I loved it.
I mean, as somebody who got to participate in the whole Crack the Mirror thing, that was like ridiculously life-changing for me, I think, because that was, like you said, I think that was the first time I was that open and that vulnerable, and it was wild for me.
You know, I love using, and I know we all do, we love using deceptively simple, what I call magic tricks. And Crack the Mirror is a great example of, it's a very simple premise that I think most people are ready to take the first step of, but that second part of it is really difficult. I cried so much with everybody. I literally cried every time. My audience makes me cry multiple times a day. Hello, I know you, Cupcake Plague.
Well, it looks like from the response of the comments that a monumental moment that was for you was also for everybody else with that Crack the Mirror.
It was absolutely the most satisfying thing I've ever done creatively. Absolutely, those moments.
So I know there's some common misconceptions of what Blackheart Collective is to people. Mm-hmm. Do you want to touch base on some of the stuff that we hear about out there?
We're not an actual cult, first of all. We're not a cult. We do not put cameras in your bedrooms, ever. Because
that real creepy, y'all.
And we are probably not what you would consider traditional horror. Do we glorify violence sometimes? Absolutely. I love blood. But at the end of the day, we are definitely a more emotional version of horror. It's where I like to live. I like to play with emotion. Anyone who's done an interview with me has probably heard me say the words, what I really love is I go see a play, a movie, a concert, an art exhibit. It's the idea of experiencing emotion with the audience. That's what gets me off. I love that. And so if I can do that for anybody else, or be a part of that, that's really what I want to do. I want to experience really, really big emotion. We play with being sad probably way more than we play with being scary. But we try to, a lot of the horror that we talk about is real life stuff. It is more the horrors of who we are, the horrors of trauma, the horrors of our own personal lives, which is far scarier than most monsters that exist in the world, because let's face it, y'all are fucking terrifying. Y'all are. And I think we know that. And so for myself, and I know for a lot of my staff, it's just all about giving people a place to experience those things in a way that is safe, where people are caring about them. It really becomes the most important thing to me. Directing the shows is a constant temperature check of where people are and how they're doing, and constantly moving in between two characters. And sometimes it's like, okay, it's time to step on the gas, and like, okay, well, this person, am I saying it right? Can't leave Price alone. Well, they're gonna get it. They're gonna get it. And that was kind of like what I loved about Ritual was we were able to do a show that was about radical acceptance through change, and also do something that was fairly scary depending on where you looked for it and the directions that you went in. Our shows will always be about how you experience what is happening around you based on the characters that you're the closest to, or what part of our story is the most relevant to you.
So something that I kind of want to discuss a little bit, because you kind of just touched on safety. I'm so curious how you go about that, because some of those scenes, like I said, were pretty intense, and yet I've never felt so safe. Like that water scene you did so perfectly, where I was terrified, but also I knew that the whole time I was safe and trusted you 100%.
Thank you. That means the world to me. There is no school to go to for physicality in live horror. It takes hundreds of hours of practice to get yourself to where you need to be with it. I spent months and months and months in Michigan in a warehouse that we were renovating. That was the original Black site. Working with Blackjack Flint, who's a very good friend of mine, basically torturing each other and then teaching other people how to torture people. Once you've been waterboarded, X hundred numbers of times, when they're doing it right, and when they're doing it wrong. And it became a process for us. I also spent, a lot of time first practicing on myself, practicing on people who were willing to let me practice on them. And then I spent a lot of time doing consulting with people in the kink community, people who understand how to hurt people in a way that is not going to hurt them. And so a lot of my background ended up coming from that, because my interest was really, really, really high, and I met the people that I needed to, and spent just a lot of time being waterboarded the absolute wrong way. Yes. And that's the other big thing. And Mills is absolutely right. Empathy is huge. It is fucking the most important thing when dealing with people in a live environment. You have to know what it's going to feel like. You have to understand what they're going through. Because if you don't have a point of reference for that. And that's fucking dangerous. And so, Clive, I love you, Clive. Even if Scarlet Gospel sucked. Shots fired. But yeah, and so I've typically surrounded myself with people who care as much as I do, want to see it done correctly, and will put the time in to figure out exactly how to do this. And it's gonna suck. Learning how to waterboard, yeah, it blows so bad, because if you haven't been waterboarded the wrong way before, and you're gonna get a lot more of that along the way. Just never with a live participant. It's gonna be you and a friend with a washcloth and a bucket of water.
Another thing that I kind of wanted to touch on was, I was really curious if there is any really, really in-depth process about naming people. because I feel like my name happened to fit really, really well. And it was really cool to be called by that name. But then when I did the film with you, to have like to be in that environment and, you know, really have it that it just became real for me. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like the coolest moment.
The naming of participants comes from a lot of things. I typically have a pool of names I really want to use beforehand that I just think really cool. And I'll solicit some too from our staff and be like, okay, what's a cool name? But what it really comes down to is here. The first task of every single Blackheart show has been exactly the same. I have asked to be submitted an email, to be submitted a video via email telling your family that you are happy, healthy, and safe. That if they don't hear from you for a while, that it's absolutely okay. That you're just taking some time for self-reflection. And the naming process comes from those videos. I sit there and we look at the person and we look at the way they're talking. I look at the way you're nervous. I look at the way that your eyes move. And we make decisions at that point on that, and along with the research that I do about participants beforehand. Typically leads me to the name that I'm going to give them for the show. So it's not random. I look into you and I say, okay, well, all right, where do I see you in this? And typically that's where the names come from. Yeah, exactly, Sam. And like huge, once again, I'm just going to give huge ups to my other PNW homies, Sam and Nikki, who are running to the extreme and who just had a super successful run of isolation. And I can't wait to see what they do next, especially, yeah. And getting to see Jay talk about it too was just super exciting. The other night, I was super inspired, and you're going to see your fingerprints on Subsistence for sure, 100%. Oh, I won't say your name, but I know who you are. I know exactly who you are.
All right. Francesca, do you got any other questions?
I think I'm good for now.
All right. Well, Josh, was there anything else that you wanted to touch base on?
Just keep looking for information on Subsistence. That's going to be coming relatively soon. Let me finish testing everything and know it's good. But look for Subsistence, which, like I said, will be a 60 to 90 minute one-on-one experience. It is circle-based. I've got other things planned for later on in the year, including, hopefully, here you go. I told you I wasn't going to talk about it, but hopefully a visit to New York City to do a live show with everybody who want to make it out there. I know, right?
Said you weren't going to talk about it.
I have to. I have to get to New York, and I have to do a live show there as long as it's safe for us to do it. Oh.
Got a question here.
So the base storyline is always set in stone. The finale was made ahead of time, and we knew we needed to get you there. Outside of that, there were moments that I knew would have to happen, but I allow a lot of stuff to happen very, very organically, depending on audience participation. So Harbinger, if you're out there, know that your storyline was not planned. And yes, Kate, I am going to make you come to New York City.
All right. Well, I wish we could have talked all day about that. But okay. I guess before we wrap, there's just a few things I want to plug. One, Josh, where can people sign up and find out about Blackheart?
Keep coming to our Instagram, send a DM. It's black.heart.collective on Instagram is the best place to reach us at. Otherwise, you can always email me at blackhearts.haunt@gmail.com. Ben.
Francesca, did you have anything that you wanted to plug?
Not really. I'm good. But
All right.
Just Blackheart.
Thank you, guys.
We got another little side project that's going to be airing really soon. Me and Josh. we sat around and we talked about what would be a cool idea, and it was getting a bunch of creators together and to just talk shop. And we have a new series coming out called The Creators Table. First episode should be up next week. It's really good stuff. We got Josh in it. We got Blaine from Stag. We got Justin from Miasma. We got Matt from the Fear Experiment. It's some really good stuff. Our good friend Allison hosts it. So I can't wait to show that. I just definitely want to thank you, Josh, for coming on and talking about stuff that you haven't really talked about before. I'm happy finally everybody got to hear it.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was an honor.
All right. Well, this is Chris, Josh, and Francesca signing off. We will see you.
See ya.